coming up on Network Africa. Russia dismisses their speculations. Reports that Metrojet A321 could have been brought down by a bomb, even as Egypt urges all to exercise caution. Hopes of a united front against President Museveni of Uganda is dashed as Amama Mbabazi and Kizza Besigye set to run as separate candidates. And Tanzania's first female vice president is sworn in alongside John Magufuli in the main city of Dar es Salaam. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I am Adeshewa Josh. It's amazing how Russia is able to keep calm in the face of reports that a bomb or an external influence could have brought down the Russian airliner Metrojet A321, as suggested by the United Kingdom and the United States intelligence. On Wednesday, Britain suspended UK-bound flights from Sharm el-Sheikh in the Sinai Peninsula, citing substantial evidence that the Russian airliner could have been brought down by a bomb.
Well, it's one of the factors that we've taken into account. We've looked at all the information available, including this public claim by ISIL, but also other information and including secret intelligence information that we have. We had to act quickly because we have a large number of tourist flights scheduled to go out to Sharm el-Sheikh today. We had aircraft on the ground waiting to fly back to the UK last night. Apart from Russia, we send more tourists to Sharm el-Sheikh than any other country. So in a sense, we had to be at the forefront of this because British nationals, British airlines are more affected than any other country's nationals apart from Russia. Now, we've worked with the Egyptians very closely. The Prime Minister spoke to President Sisi on Tuesday evening. I spoke to my Egyptian counterpart yesterday. Our security people and our intelligence people have been in very close contact with them. Our aviation security experts have been working on the ground at Sharm el-Sheikh with them. All of this has been working very well, but in the end, it is our decision. We have to make that decision. We are responsible for the safety of British nationals and British aircraft. We can't subcontract or delegate that responsibility to anybody else.
Well, Britain indeed taking responsibility for the safety of its citizens there. Well, it was not too long after that the United States also released its own intelligence corroborating the claims by the United Kingdom that airline could have been brought down by a bomb. In the midst of all of this, it is important to note that the official report from the team of investigators is yet to be released because they are still examining the true cause of the crash. Well, this might explain why the Kremlin is asking everyone not to speculate, saying any sort of version of what happened can only be put forward by an investigation. After all, those on board the ill-fated flight were mostly Russians. Well, Britain is unexpectedly still concerned about its citizens, many of whom are holidaying in the resort area in Sharm el-Sheikh. Speaking on the cancellation of UK-bound flights from the Sinai Peninsula, Prime Minister David Cameron said after chairing the government's Cobra Emergency Committee that the decision is basically about putting the safety of British people first.
Well, I've just chaired another meeting of the government's Cobra Emergency Committee. The decisions that I'm taking are about putting the safety of British people first. That's why we suspended the flights to Sharm el-Sheikh, and that's why it's going to take some time before we can fly people out of Sharm el-Sheikh back to Britain. What we need to put in place is more security at that airport so it's safe to fly people home. That's our priority. That's what we'll work with the Egyptians to do. Look, we cannot be certain that the Russian airliner was brought down by a terrorist bomb, but it looks increasingly likely that that was the case. And so I act on the intelligence, I act on the advice of experts, and it's the right thing to do to suspend these flights until we can safely bring people home. I have every sympathy for the Egyptians because, of course, tourism is vitally important to their economy. I want to restore our links and our flights with Egypt as soon as is safe and is possible. But, I have to put the safety and want to put the safety of British people first. Now, if that Russian airliner was brought down by a terrorist bomb, that does have very real implications, and it means it's absolutely essential that we see that improvement of security at Sharm el-Sheikh airport. And that's what I'll be discussing with the Egyptians today, and we'll be working round the clock with our experts to help put that in place. I also feel huge sympathy for British holidaymakers, those who are about to go on holiday, who have had to unpack their bags and stay at home. That'll be deeply disappointing to them. And also, I'm worried too about the 20,000 British people in Sharm el-Sheikh, many of whom now are overdue for coming home and will be wanting to come home, and we'll do everything we can to help them. But I want to make sure they can come home safely. That's what all of this is about.
That's UK Prime Minister David Cameron. Let's take you to other stories now. History is made today in Tanzania as the nation's first female Vice President, Samia Suluhu, is sworn in as receiving a far bigger chair. She received a far bigger chair than John Magufuli, the president-elect. Both of them were sworn in Dar es Salaam today. Now, John Magufuli was sworn in following his landslide victory in fiercely contested elections in Dar es Salaam today. Well, as the two of them begin a historic journey together, their jobs appear to be cut out for them, including tackling corruption, creating jobs, improving education, and constitutional reforms, all of which are the concerns of the Tanzanian people. Let's bring in Jill Craig, VOA correspondent. She has been monitoring the inauguration. She joins me now live on Network Africa. Thank you for making out time to speak to us. What a historic day for Tanzania. What does having a female vice president, the first in the history of that country, mean for the government and the people of Tanzania?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. You're absolutely right. It is a very big day for Tanzania for two reasons. They have now inaugurated their new president, and they also have a new vice president, who, as you mentioned, is a female from Zanzibar. And I must be very honest with you, when I was interviewing people in Dar es Salaam, voters, they didn't really seem like, they didn't act like it was a very big deal that she was a woman. They looked at it more as, well, this may or may not be our candidate, his choice, but basically they were looking at it more from a political perspective than what gender she was. So I must say that going around, when I would ask people, what does this mean, they kind of said it's great, it's nice, and then they moved on to the next topic. So I think it is a big deal. I talked to some people in Zanzibar today who said that they were thrilled that she was going to be in office. And I can also say that Tanzania, they have had higher level female elected officials before. I believe the Speaker of the National Assembly was a female. So I think for Tanzania, it may not be it's historic, but it may not, have quite the same meaning that it might in another country. But regardless, I would say that Tanzanians are very pleased. But let me change that. The ones who supported CCM are very pleased that they have a new team in place.
Well, there are a number of issues Tanzanians hope would be resolved as soon as possible. First is the Zanzibar crisis. The elections were cancelled. How do you see this handled, and what is likely to happen if nothing is done?
Well, I spoke with a Zanzibar attorney today, and his thoughts were that the annulment of the elections were illegal and they're unconstitutional. And furthermore, there was no precedent that's been set but for this. So essentially what happened is that because the chairman of the Zanzibar Electoral Commission, Mr. Jecha, from what we're being told, he single-handedly decided to annul the elections. So that happened when about 70% of the results were in, and that's a problem. According to the Zanzibar Constitution, the elections can be postponed if that happens either before the elections have started or if sometime during the course of the day of polling, if there is a problem, that election can be canceled during the polling and then postponed up to 90 days. The situation right now is that people are saying that there's 90 days to hold the new election. That may be what happens, but technically that is not the letter of the law. And what happened is just anyone's guess as to what the next move will be. The other situation that makes this a constitutional challenge is that the current president must remain in office until the new president can come along. So that's also throwing the Constitution into disarray currently. And I would say that even the attorneys right now don't know what's going to happen, but everyone has their fingers crossed that it can remain peaceful and that violence won't will erupt over this.
Now, I mean, you've been talking so much about the Constitution. Let's talk about the reforms that outgoing President Jakaya, I beg your pardon, Kikwete, promised. He promised constitutional reforms but failed to deliver on it during his 10 years in office. Mr. Magufuli ignored the issue during the election campaign. Can he afford to continue to do so throughout his presidency?
That's a great question, and the answer, in my opinion, is no. Because you saw such a strong opposition turnout this year, something that was unprecedented in previous elections, I think that Mr. Magufuli definitely has his work cut out for him. In today's inaugural address, he made a special point to say that he would be working with the opposition in the future, and I think that that's going to be absolutely imperative. We see that voters, have given quite a bit of support overall to the opposition, and that's going to have to be of concern to him. Specifically, I will say that within the discussion over the Constitution, two main points have been brought up. First of all, is sort of the structure of the government. So currently, we have the union government, so the overall Tanzanian government, and then also the Zanzibar semi-autonomous government. So that's what there is currently. There's been discussion over having all three of a Tanzanian, Tanganyika, and also a Zanzibar governmental structure. So those details are heavily debated. People have different opinions on that. And secondly, as you might imagine, people have differing opinions on how public officials' ethics should be handled. So that's another big issue that keeps coming up when discussion of the Constitution is involved. So I don't think that Mr. Magufuli is going to have the luxury of ignoring this issue.
That's right. Jill Craig there for us from Nairobi. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date about the Tanzania inauguration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a break on Network Africa. When we come back, UN experts say both sides in South Sudan's conflict are stockpiling weapons despite a peace deal signed in August. In a moment.